Ever had a favorite game? A game that you just couldn't put down? A game that just had to be finished? Well, my friend Steve and I were hanging out one day. This is back when we were younger. 10 or 11, I believe. Anyway, we just saved up quite a bit of money from our allowances, and doing odd jobs like mowing the neighbor's lawn and whatnot, and finally had enough to each get a Game Boy Advance and one game apiece. Steve was so excited, he was jumping with joy, in a literal sense. We entered the game store, and all over the shelves were hundreds of games for a bunch of consoles. I turned to look for my friend, and I saw him talking to a store employee. The employee nodded and walked away from him. Steve strolled casually towards me with a wicked grin on his face. "Hey man, guess what?" he said. "Let me guess. They don't have any Pokemon games," I responded, quite slightly bummed. "Actually, there's one game left," he said with an eager tone. "Here's what I'm thinking. We pool our money together, and I'll borrow the game for a week, and then you can borrow the game." I was reluctant to agree with this. Then, again, we were best friends, so I accepted and remained happy that I was still going to get to enjoy the game. The clerk came back and stood in the doorway, just staring at Steve. Steve walked over and handed him a $20 bill, put something in his pocket, and just walked out of the store with a smile. The clerk went back to stocking the shelves and completely forgot I was standing there. Well, I left and went home. After the first night, I'll be honest, I really want to play that game, but I think I can wait it out. I mean, he would want to give him some time to play, so I continued about my day. Well, a few days ago, I decided to call Steve to see what he was up to. There was no answer. I thought he was maybe not home. Maybe his family went out or something. On the 6th day, I saw a television report about a boy who had gone missing. The picture was Steve. I rushed over to his house and found that his parents were sobbing outside. "Johnny?" his mom asked. "Hey, are you okay?" "The only thing he left was this," she said in a mournful voice, as she passed me a piece of paper. In the note, written in dark red ink, it read, "Game over." I don't understand what this means," his mother cried. "Do you mind if I go check his room?" I asked, rather determined. I had a feeling I knew what he meant with this. "Sure," she whispered, almost hopeless. I ran into the house and headed for his room. The strange thing was that nothing looked out of place. He had an old wooden desk, and under a couple of comic books, I saw the corner what appeared to be a game cartridge. Picking it up and looking at it, it was creepy. It wasn't like a normal type of Pokemon game. The case was deep red, and the picture at the front was of Pikachu. I didn't have much time to inspect the cartridge, so I tucked it away in my pocket and walked out of the room. Leaving my friend's house, I tried to think of where he would have gone, but nothing came to mind. I ended up getting home around 6 p.m., and after I took off my jacket, the game fell out of my pocket and struck the ground. It made me take a step back. The cartridge was lying face down. I stopped for a moment, and realized that this Pokemon game was probably the last thing Steve did before he went missing. I picked up the game and examined the label. It had a picture of what appeared to be Pikachu on the front. At least I think it's Pikachu. It looked to be black, with piercing red eyes. I grabbed my Game Boy and put the game in the slot. Pausing for a moment, I flicked the power button to on, and nothing happened. This is weird. I just put brand new batteries in this thing. Well, I opened some of my drawers and found a pack of batteries that only had 2 left. My lucky day. I immediately popped out the old batteries and placed the new ones in. I hit the power button again, and again, nothing happened. This is stupid, I thought to myself before placing the game on my desk. After about an hour and a half or so of watching TV, I was so mad that I couldn't get to play the game. "Johnny, your father and I are going out. You'll be good. We'll be back soon," my mother said before closing the front door behind her. I watched them drive away in the rain. I continued to watch TV, simply because there was nothing else to do. It was raining, getting dark, and the damn game wouldn't work. I stormed to my room in a rage, annoyed yet determined to find out what caused behind why my game wouldn't work. I closed my door behind me, and the only light illuminating me was a small night light that I had. I wasn't scared of the dark or anything. The light was a skull, and it shattered the skull off the wall. When I looked over at the desk, it looked like the Game Boy was on. I picked it up, and immediately it shut itself off. The screen went white, and nothing happened. I sat there for a moment, just examining the whole system before a loud screech came from the game, so loud that I let out a scream. After a moment to compose myself, I watched the screen flicker from the black and white. Game Boy flashed across this black screen in a crimson color. I had never seen any Game Boy start up this way. The game began with the intro, the one with the Pokemon League battle. The first trainer, called a Charizard, though the image was hyper-realistic, like a real-life dragon. When it showed the strong-willed Pokemon, its trainer could be seen in the background. It was Gary Oak. He looked to be crying, constantly weeping, not paying any attention to the Charizard that he just called. Then the screen flickered. A shadowy figure was standing on a platform, looking towards Gary. The only way I knew it was a person was a thin, grey outline around its body. The opponent threw a black Pokeball in front of the Fire Dragon. A Squirtle appeared. The Squirtle, however, had a black turtle shell, which what happened to the gadgets on it. It also had those sunglasses from the TV show. Squirtle used sludge. It struck the Charizard's tail. It was super effective. Charizard has died. Then the screen flickered once more. The original Pokemon logo appeared, and the word Blood Edition in red appeared underneath before the menu screen popped up. How is this a kid's game, I wondered, but for some reason I just sat there staring at the menu screen. There was only one option to select. It was continued. I tapped A and the save file popped up. There was only one save file. A trainer with 6 Pokemon, and the time play was 99 hours, 99 minutes, and 99 seconds. But the strangest thing was about his file was the trainer's name. It wasn't Ash, or Red, or even Steve. The name was Johnny. That's my name. Hesitantly, I tapped A and select the file. The game screeched one more. There was an image of my sprite was shown, standing on the edge of a virtual cliff. Before making any moves, I checked the stats of my character. I actually had a pretty solid group. It was much like Ash's Pokemon. Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Butterfree, Pidgeotto, and the last Pokeball was blacked out. I just assumed the Pokemon had just fainted and was unusable. Well, that end, because the other Pokemon were very low health, pretty much 10 H points apiece. I checked my character stats, and where the image of my sprite was supposed to be was a blacked out image. I shrugged it off and closed out, beginning to walk. I was appeared to be a cliff of Mount Moon. There was something wrong. It looked like bones were scattered all around my sprite. I walked to be what appeared to be a cave entrance into the mountains. Upon walking into the darkness, my sprite was knocked back to the cliff, and a sprite resembling Professor Oak walked out. I walked up to him and tapped A, though when I did, his dialogue box came up. "Oh, Gary, why didn't you listen to me? You were the best." But you were too stubborn. The professor had stopped at the far end of the cliff. I slowly walked over to him, and once more I tapped A. Only a Pokemon Master can control them. His sprite said before walking off the cliff. The game had then flickered, as if reacting to someone hitting the ground. Then a high-pitched screeching noise played. Did I just watch a person commit suicide? I thought. I swallowed my fear and headed back to the entrance of the cave. I entered it and it was pitch black all around me. My sprite continued into the darkness. I was just trying to get out of this mountain. As I walked, a dialogue box came up. "Boy, it sure is dark in here." The battle music instantly started playing. I was startled for a moment. The dialogue box returned. Surrender now, or prepare to fight. My opponent appeared to be James from Team Rocket, but he looked incredibly sad on the top of that. He was all by himself. Trainer James has chosen Wheezing. Jessie didn't listen. She was too stubborn. After seeing the Wheezing, I have noticed that its HP was 5, and the image of the Pokemon was completely blacked out, aside from its eye and the white X on its body. I choose Charmander. Wheezing used suffocation. Wheezing has died. Charmander has died. What the hell? I never heard of a Pokemon technique called that before. I wasn't too mad though. I still had 4 Pokemon left, and James only had 1. After our battle, the sprite of James just sat there in the same spot as before. I tapped A, these dialogue blocks flickered. Only a Pokemon Master can control them. His sprite then fell over on the shadowy ground of the mountain. Team Rocket trainer James has died. At this point, 2 people have died. I was terrified. I really didn't want to play this anymore. This game was making me sick. I checked my inventory. I only had a single revive. When I tried to select it, I simply got a response that it's too soon to use this now. So I pressed on. There had to be a reason why this fire was left at Mount Moon. Boy, it sure is dark in here. I came across a ladder ascending to the top level of the mountain cave. It was a bit more visible than the lower levels. The area was lined with gravestones, almost like Lavender Town. A sprite facing away from me was standing before a gravestone. He was crying. Why did they take my best friend? The spirit asked. The battle music stopped playing and my opponent appeared. It was a deception of Ash, though he looked to be savagely beaten. His eyes were missing, and also was chunks of his flesh. Trainer Ash chose Haunter. I decided to choose Squirtle. His Haunter was strange. It appeared to be white instead of the normal black. The Haunter had only 5 hit points. Haunter used Fear. The screen flickered a couple of times, and a painful cry echoed from the speakers. When the screen returned, it was completely black. Squirtle has died. The game prompted me to choose another Pokemon. Well, I had no second Pokemons to battle a ghost, so I figured that this is the ending of the game. I chose Butterfree. Butterfree is too scared to move. Haunter used Torment. Once again, the screen flickered, and the sound of a unrelenting pain screamed through the speakers. Butterfree has died. I began to feel sad. All these Pokemon are just dying, and I can't stop it. Haunter has ran away. Confused, I tapped the A button, and the sprite of the boy in front of me had vanished. At this point, I only had 2 Pokemon left, Bulbasaur and Pidgeotto. The only way out of this horrific place seemed to be a ladder on the corner of the room. There was a signpost next to the ladder. It read, "Only a Pokemon Master can control them." I climbed the ladder, and I was at what appeared to be the peak of the mountain. The snow was heavy, and the screen was dimly lit. After a few steps, my sprite collapsed. It's hard to breathe up here. The screen flickered once more, and I could have sworn that I saw a skull flash across the screen. When the game returned to normal, there was a sprite standing directly in front of mine. It was a shadow. The shadow said one thing, and only one thing. I am a Pokemon Master. The screen began flashing red and black, with a twisted version of the battle music playing. The shadow chose Squirtle, though this Pokemon looked different. The shell was black, and it was wearing the blackish sunglasses. But the strangest thing about the Pokemon was its skin. It wasn't its usual aqua blue. The skin was red, and it looked like it was dripping with blood. A Squirtle was still called a Squirtle. I thought to myself, I selected Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur used Vine Whip. The master laughed at my attempt to overcome this little water Pokemon. Squirtle used Acid. I could still hear the screams of my Bulbasaur. The image of a Pokemon was replaced by a rotten corpse that had been eaten away to the bone. Bulbasaur has died. Fearful of sending out my final Pokemon, reluctantly, I just selected Pidgeotto. The master chose Charizard and his final Pokemon. I knew it was only a matter of time before I lost the game. His Charizard had black skin, with patches of red. It was missing half of its wing. What scared me the most was its eyes. It didn't have any, just black sockets. Pidgeotto used Wing Attack. Charizard was unaffected. Charizard used Flamethrower. A Pidgeotto fell from the sky and was burning alive. It cries of pain running throughout my whole house. The game grew silent. I had lost. But why was that Shadow Trainer still on the screen? The dialogue box appeared. Are you a Pokemon Master? The option appeared. No and yes. I paused for a moment. This probably had to be the worst choice of my entire life. I stared at the options. But I lost. A Pokemon Master wouldn't lose. Then I began to wonder. Maybe there was a second chance. I selected yes. An eerie sound began to play. It was Twisted. My inventory opened and the revive was selected. I chose to revive the unknown Pokemon I had from the beginning. I finally knew what my sixth Pokemon was. It was a Pikachu, the electric mouse Pokemon. The little Pokemon was the only thing standing between me and pure terror. Finally, a battle of masters. As the trainer spoke, I felt a chill run down my spine. Then he sent out his final Pokemon. It too was a Pikachu, though he looked grotesque. The tail had bite marks. Its body looked to be rotting away. Its eyes were lifeless and white. It was staring at me, not just me in the game, but it was staring at me as I focused on the screen. Pikachu, you shark. The screen suddenly went black, and so did my nightlight. I was too scared to move. All I could do was stare blankly at the screen. The screen flickered, and I saw my Pikachu. Though it looked to be badly beaten, it only had 1 HP left. His Pikachu, however, was holding an evil Pokeball. Pikachu, you Shadow. Mine was swallowed up completely as the ball rocked back and forth. Shrieks of pain and fear resonated throughout my speakers. You are not a Pokemon Master, the Shadow said. Then the game turned off. Well, the years have passed, and I haven't really told anybody about this game, and I completely forgot about it all. My son told me he was going to be a Pokemon Master, just like Steve. I corrected him. You mean Ash, right? He shook his head. No, I mean Steve. And walked back to his room with a smile.